Hey, welcome back to my channel. My name is Yuki. I finally got a haircut. My hair was super long and messy, and summer in Japan is really hot, so I really wanted to get a haircut. And now I feel great. I don't know if you can tell, but the back of my head is really short. So how are you doing? I hope you guys are having a wonderful day. And today we're gonna cover Genki lesson 3. And Genki lesson 3 has a lot of grammar points, and I wanted to make just one video for that, but it would be really long, so I decided to divide it into two parts, and today it's part 1. Okay, so what we are covering today is verb conjugation. This is one of the hardest thing in the beginning, right? But don't worry about it, it's not gonna be that hard. So all the verbs can be categorized into 3 parts. The first one is Ru-verbs. The second one is U-verbs. And the third one is irregular verbs. And depending on the category, how you conjugate is different. So after introducing those 3 verbs, I'm gonna talk about number 2, rules are not necessary, why I think those categories are not that important. Right, so let's get started. Right, so the first verb category is Ru-verbs. Ru-verbs are literally the verbs that end with the word ru. For example, 食べる to eat, 寝る to sleep, 起きる to wake up, and 見る to look. But those forms are called dictionary forms, and you need to conjugate into polite form and affirmative forms usually. And how you conjugate is really easy. So you basically have to change る into ます. So 食べる it's gonna be 食べます. 寝る it's gonna be 寝ます. 起きる it's gonna be 起きます. And 見る is gonna be 見ます. It's pretty simple, right? And then let's move on to negative forms. Negative, affirmative, negative, polite, whatever you call it. We are gonna use the word ません. So this is pretty much the same thing. You can just replace る with ません. So 食べる to eat, it's gonna be 食べません. 寝る is gonna be 寝ません. 起きる is gonna be 起きません. And 見る is gonna be 見ません. Pretty easy, right? And those parts that I highlighted blue are called stem forms. And stem forms are the part of the verb that stay the same. So you don't need to change that part. But stem forms are not that important, so just keep it in the corner of your head like, oh, the part that is not gonna change is called stem form. Okay, so let's review all the verbs. Once I was taking Spanish class at the university, but I had to get dropped out of that class because I was horrible at remembering words. And I think some of you are like me, and so the most important thing for those people is repetition. So let's review real quick. So now I would like you to put dictionary form of the verbs into those blanks. And I'm gonna give you answers in 5 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so here are answers. To eat is 食べる. To sleep is 寝る. To wake up is 起きる. To look is 見る. Right, now let's change that into affirmative form. Okay, I'm gonna give you 5 seconds. So remember how to conjugate those verbs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so here are answers. 食べます to eat, 寝ます to sleep, 起きます to wake up, and 見ます to look. Now, let's review the rule. So you just need to replace る into ます, right? Okay, then now let's conjugate into negative form. And I'm gonna count 5 seconds again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right, so here are answers. 食べません, 寝ません, 起きません, 見ません. So you can just replace る into ません, right? It's pretty easy. Right, so now you mastered the first verb category, Ru-verbs. Let's move on to the second category, U-verbs. And I picked 4 U-verbs as examples. The first one, nomu, to drink, yomu, to read, hanasu, to speak, and iku, to go. How to conjugate U-verbs are a lot more confusing than Ru-verbs, but I'm gonna break it down and explain in the easiest way I could. Okay, all the U-verbs end with the character that is at the third of hiragana row. So for example, nomu, the character is mu, right? Mu is in the row of ma, mi, mu, me, mo. And mu is at the third, ma, mi, mu, this one. And you have to change this into the second character, in this case, mi, ma, mi, mu, mi, and then put masu. So it's gonna be nomimasu. Let's move on to the second word, yomu. This is also the same. So the character is mu, ma, mi, mu. So you're going to change mu into mi and put masu. Yomimasu. Okay, next, hanasu, to speak. So this one too. Sashi su se so. Su is the third character of sashi su se so row. This one, su. So you're going to change su into shi and then put masu. Hanashimasu. Hanasu is gonna be hanashimasu. And the last one, iku. The character is ku, right? Ku is the third one of kakiku keiko. Kakiku. And you need to change this into ki, the second one. So iki and then ikimasu. That's how you conjugate. I hope my explanation worked, but if you couldn't understand what I said, please repeat and then listen to it again. And if you don't understand me still, I'm so sorry. Maybe someone could explain better. This is really hard. So that's how you conjugate into affirmative or polite form. And how you change negative form is the same as Ru-verb. You just need to change masu into masen. So nomu is gonna be nomimasen. And yomu is gonna be yomimasen. Hanasu is gonna be hanashimasen. And iku is gonna be ikimasen. That's easy, right? So we mastered 2/3 of all the verb categories. And the last one is irregular verbs. And there are only 2 irregular verbs, suru and kuru. Suru is to do and kuru is to come. Both suru and kuru end with the words ru. So people usually confuses those verbs with Ru-verbs. But suru and kuru, those 2 verbs are irregular verbs and it has different conjugations. So be careful about it. You can just memorize it one by one. Affirmative or polite form of suru is gonna be shimasu. And kuru, kimasu. And the negative forms, shimasen and kimasen. I said there are only 2 verbs, suru and kuru. But as for suru verb, actually you can combine a lot of nouns and suru and make a verb. For example, to study, benkyou suru. Benkyou is a noun for study, but if you put suru, after that it's gonna be a verb to study. And it's gonna be conjugated in the same way. Benkyou suru is gonna be benkyou shimasu. And the second one, to cook, ryori suru. It's also composed of 2 words, the noun ryori, cooking, and the verb suru, ryori suru. And it's gonna be conjugated into ryori shimasu. And that was it. You mastered all the conjugations. So congratulations. So I introduced 3 categories of verbs, but I personally don't think rules are not necessary, and you don't necessarily need to sort all the verbs into 3 categories and think about the conjugation. I think it's a lot more efficient to learn one by the sound. The reason why is there are a lot of irregular forms. So for example, right here I collected 4 verbs that end with the word ru. Can you tell which one is actually ru verbs? If you study a lot, probably you could, but I think a lot of people are confused. All of those end with the word do. Okay, here are answers. So the first one, suru, like we already talked about it, it's irregular verb, and neru, this is Ru-verb. But the third one, kaeru, this is actually U-verb. Even though this word ends with the word do, it's actually U-verb. And the last one, kuru, yeah, this is irregular form. So, like, if you remember, okay, Ru verbs end with the word do, then you're gonna have a lot of problems because actually some U verbs end with the word do, so it's really confusing. And by the way, how to conjugate into affirmative forms are like this. Suru is gonna be shimasu because it's irregular verb, you just need to memorize it by the sound. Second one, neru, it's Ru-verb. Do you remember how to conjugate Ru verbs? You have to replace do with masu, right? So neru is gonna be nemasu. And next, kaeru. If it's Ru-verb, the conjugation is gonna be kaemasu. But actually, this is U-verb. So you have to conjugate it like this. Kaeru is gonna be kaerimasu. Rariru. In the U-verb, the character is the third one, rariru. You have to change this into ri and then put mas, kaerimasu. The last one is kuru, and we also talked about it. It's irregular verb, so it's gonna be kimasu. So this is just my personal opinion, but especially how to conjugate U-verb is kind of confusing and complicated. I just like to memorize it by the sound. You know, like kaeru, oh, kaerimasu. Nomu, nomimasu. Yomu, yomimasu. It's a lot more natural and efficient. So if you're having a hard time sorting verbs into those three and like use the rule to conjugate it one by one, I just recommend you to learn each one by the sound. Unless your Japanese teacher forces you to remember those three categories. As long as you can tell the conjugation, I think you're good. It's kind of out of the topic, but it's like the English rule I before E except after C. If you're learning English, you've heard it somewhere, right? So this is the spelling rule of English. There are a lot of English words that has I and E in the spelling. Depending on the word, I goes first, and in other cases, E goes first. So a lot of foreign English learners are gonna be like, so how do you tell those? So somebody came up with this rule to systematically explain why I goes first and E goes first. So in this rule, I goes before E, except there is the letter C. For example, the words believe, friends, etc. There's no C letter, so I goes first. In the next pattern, when E goes first, there is C before that. For example, receive, ceiling. There is letter C, so that's why E has to be before I. That's the rule, but you know, I was like, wait, then what about the word weird? I goes first, but there's no C, right? And I think there are a lot of words like that. I think it's a lot easier to memorize one by one rather than following this rule, right? But anyways, let me know how you guys think about it in the comments. I'm curious. And thank you for watching this video. I hope you guys learned the basic rules for conjugating verbs, but it definitely takes time to remember conjugation. So please take time and don't rush, and please don't pressure yourself, and you'll be fine. If you thought this video was helpful and would like to see another coming videos, please hit the like button and also consider subscribing. I also have private lessons if you guys are interested in learning from me, so please check the description down below. Right? じゃあ今日はどうもありがとうございました。さよなら。